And we are recording.
And got it.
With
Okay.
there's a fly flying around in here. Never has there been one in here for like a year and a half, but there's one fly that I cannot get. So excuse me if
You sure
I
it's the same? You sure it's the same fly?
I'm not sure, but there's only ever been one present. So I don't know if I'm killing it and it's being replaced or if it's the same one eluding me. Whatever it is, it's kind of driving me insane. So if you see me start to follow it around during the podcast,
Okay.
that's why. Just, well, we're off to a strong start as I've established as always. I'm unhinged and not entirely here as I'm chasing down a fly. But
If anybody hears something like that, they'll know you got the fly.
you'll know. Or I just hurt myself. Um, but yeah, Paul, you've been on here several times before. We've talked about all of your endeavors, snorkeling and getting a tan instead of working away in your what was it, your banking job or home banking
Yeah,
or
that's a
banking
yeah.
protocol?
Home banking, electronic banking,
Yeah,
economics, all in the past. Not that I don't. It comes in handy once in a while,
sure.
But technology has been progressing so fast lately that I'm not even current.
Yeah,
I used to be like an industry expert in this
yeah.
stuff. Now it's like, hello, duh, what happens?
Dude, I'm 32 and I don't know any of this shit. It's past. I'm behind like the shock wave of like being ahead of the curve. I think I started falling behind in college, and now like I don't know any of it. I've descended back into. I am part of the boomer group now. I don't understand any of it.
Oh, welcome to the boomers. Okay.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and I'm
You
happy
can
to
be
have.
honorary member.
I am an honorary member. Thank you for being here, everybody. It's been exactly 5 months since I've understood technology. Um, But today we're going to go over your book, Fugitive in Paradise, which,
Sure.
as always, I'll put the link to it in the description. I know you've got a copy there. Do you want to
Yeah.
hold it up
Yeah.
for
They're a
everybody
copy.
for everybody watching? Fugitive in Paradise, which I'm not, as anybody that watches this podcast knows, I'm not big on well, really anything but like history. But I thoroughly enjoyed this, and I'm not kissing your ass. I thoroughly enjoyed it
Thank you.
because it also seemed realistic.
Hmm.
That's what it was. Is it wasn't some James Bond shit. It was like, yeah, it's some corrupt motherfuckers wanting to move their money to get a return, and
Yep.
then some people, they throw a wrench in the gears and get fucked. Not
And then
really,
they're
but excuse
paying
my
the price.
French.
Yeah.
Yeah,
What's interesting, I never know when every book I've written, I've always figured would be my last.
yeah,
You never know when the next book is going to happen.
yeah.
And typically it kind of happens from something totally out of the ordinary. And as I wrote in the introduction, I was walking on this beach one day in Riceville Beach in the Carolinas, and I kind of stumbled upon this thing. You can see it. It's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a curved piece of looked like I wasn't sure what it was, and I looked at the what looks like tooth holes in a
Mm-hmm.
row, and I said, "Damn, that could be maybe a jawbone." And I put it like this. I said, "Wow, it even fits my jaw. Look at this. This is
Yeah,
maybe a human jawbone." So you're thinking, okay, a human jawbone washes up on a beach. Well, it had to come from somewhere. Where could it
yeah,
have come from? What human burial sacrifices, whatever, or near a water or an ocean or something like that. And I'm thinking, where do I hang out a lot? Down in the Yucatan, the Mayans,
yeah,
a lot of beach stuff going on around. So I thought, okay, maybe this could be, but in real life, I said maybe this is, from could be a murder victim. Who knows where it came from? So I took a few photos and sent it to a couple of dentists who said, looks pretty interesting. Uh, could be tooth holes, but kind of shallow to be a human tooth, maybe some kind of animal tooth. And I said, okay, well, not as exciting as a human one, whatever. Did some more investigating, sent it to some marine biologists and some underwater archaeologists. And the upshot of it was, it long a story, is that it was looked like to them it wasn't bone, it was more like a broken piece of shell from that had broken off from a larger piece of shell, and just kind of happened to have the shape of a jaw. And these holes were made by a species of worm called a boring worm, B-O-R-I-N-G, that tunnels into shell to get the calcium, whatever is in the shell, for nutrients. So how boring is that? So I was, oh well, okay. I guess it wasn't as exciting as I thought it was going to be, but I could probably, start a story around this.
Mm.
So that was the genesis of the story. And you
How much of it's based in reality? Because if I'm not incorrect, you mentioned Vecchione, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I pepper my books with the real people because real people. I'm in law enforcement terms, I'm a civilian. I don't know
Hmm.
anything about law enforcement, forensic stuff, whatever. So if you want to make your book credible, you have to kind of like rely on some of these sources. And I found it kind of it gets a some people get a kick out of being in a book, and using if I can use a real background, it's even better. But to your point, or your question about how much is this in reality, the other half of the story was that one of my favorite places where I go scuba diving down in Cozumel is off this beautiful deserted beach that I wrote about in the book called Palancar Beach. And I've often been by this piece of land. There's like a beachfront restaurant, for snorkeling and scuba and everything else right there. But past that is this, mile or two long, beautiful white sandy beach, fringed by, mangroves, and right behind it, vegetation and stuff like that. And it's right in the water there. And I said, man, I'm surprised nobody has developed this thing yet. It's a beautiful piece of beach because further north, all the, most of the island has been developed. And sure enough, one day I see this sign and it says, no trespasso, or what would they say in Spanish. And I said, something's going on here. So I did some investigating, and sure enough, I found out that there was stuff in the works that some development or investment group had bought this property and wanted to develop it. We first came to our attention because there's a pier off this thing that dive boats would pull up during the service interval, which is between dives. And if you wanted to kind of relieve yourself, you might go into the jungle and take care of business. Okay.
Sure.
And before you know it, first they were charging boats to pull up to what was a free pier. Then you couldn't pull up anymore at all. They were closing it off. And said, what the hell's going on here? And we found out that this group had bought the property, and they were in discussions with all kinds of economic environmentalist groups down in Mexico and the part of the government that was saying, no, no, you can't do this. It's off limits. But down there, money has a way of changing people's positions, so to speak. Okay.
Yeah.
And it was the subject of a lot of controversy for a couple of years. But you could tell the momentum was going closer and closer in one direction, meaning something was going to happen.
Yeah.
And sure enough, when I was down there, I see it had been cordoned off, and there was there was all kinds of little bit of development here and there going on, some hut buildings and stuff, and they were beginning to level the mangroves and stuff. I said, damn, it's going to be developed. So
Is there any truth to the mafia connection?
probably in this case,
Blink
no.
twice, blink twice if you're in danger.
It, it's probably just local development guys. I mean, you never know who's behind where the money comes from.
Sure.
But in this case, the mob is probably not behind it, which could have made it even more interesting. But it's probably a local development group just looking to make some money, like developers do, and not really worrying about the consequences of environmentally or anything else.
It might be even more dangerous though if the group isn't the mob, right? Because if you're the mob, there's this,
Yes.
and I speak from all of my wisdom and all of my years in the mafia. But with the mob, there's this sort of like they don't want anyone really looking too closely, right? There's this they it's just money, like shut up,
Mhm.
develop it. They don't want the magnifying glass looking at them. Versus if you're a squeaky clean developer, you might actually it's like which one's more dangerous, like the Genovese family or like Walmart? And it's like
Well,
mm, I might say Walmart, right?
I don't know if the developers are squeaky clean. Put it that way.
But well,
They're
in
more.
comparison to a traditional, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, in
Yes.
terms of like a mob, like the Crips are bad, but like
Mhm.
which one has a bigger damage on like U.S. society? Like the Crips or like the bankers in '08, right? And
Yeah.
but that's what I mean is so
Yeah.
that might not necessarily mean one or the other's better or worse.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
as someone that's been in like both both universes, you've been in the like you said the corporate
Mhm.
industry expert, really as white collar as you can get. I
Yeah.
mean, kind of stamped out of like encyclopedia white collar
Yep.
to now you are like the most interesting man in the world. You have a beautiful tan, you're swimming with whales and sharks and all sorts of magical things. What is your view on because oftentimes you have someone that's only ever been in one world or the other. You have the cutthroat businessman who's like, shut up, it's all profit. You don't understand how the world works. And then you have the person who has only ever been associated with, the land and nature. And that's all well and good, but they maybe don't understand how modern society works. And neither of them are completely fault free. They both have their reasonings for the corporate guy maybe doesn't see the big picture of like, hey, the stuff is irreplaceable. You
Mhm.
cannot, it takes a billion years for this stuff to come back. Vice on the other side, the hippie nature guy might be like, hey man, like we live in a world of like modern convenience and medicine, and this is powered by a modern economic machine. You're at an interesting point in that not only have you lived both, it's not even side by side. Like you did one fully and then no
Right.
pun intended dove into the other fully. What is your opinion on something like you see the beauty of the diving and of this natural area, but you also lived in the very real world of like an operating business.
Right. Dollars and cents, and you have to make a
That is
have to be
the
sustainable.
it's not fun, it's not sexy, but at the end of the day, like that's the thing that makes it
Mhm.
so that your car runs on gas. My electronics do plug into a wall, which is paid for by or provided by a utility company. Like there's a real politic to it that it's not, unfortunately, it's not all rainbows and sunshine. How does that kind of skew your, or not skew, but shape your perception of something like this, of this is the native land, and not even getting into the point that like, well, that's, we can't really talk about it, we're
Mhm.
American, it's not our own homeland. Aside from that.
It gets very interesting when you cross back over the line, so to speak. In other words, I still have friends in both worlds. Okay, so I see them occasionally and whatever, and it's when I've been on one of my I wouldn't say exactly an echo trip, but communing with nature or doing what I do with whale sharks, the whole bit, right, and enjoying the beauty of coral reefs and things like that, and enjoying that kind of stuff. And you come back to reality, and then when you I still have friends on the other side of the picture. So when I mix with them, socialize with them, whatever, and topics come up, like isn't global warming a farce, or isn't it, and you kind of say, you kind of feel your way. You have to tiptoe your
Hmm.
way through the conversation, so that you don't totally turn somebody off or cause them to get get violent against you.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, whereas you were one of them entirely at one point, now you come across with a different perspective, and they kind of look at you and just go, "Really? Did you drink the Kool-Aid or something?" And you have
Yeah.
to convince them, "No, I didn't drink the Kool-Aid, but I've seen the other side of the
But
coin, and there's some other deeper factors here." And it goes both ways. If I go into in my other, the fantasy world of what I do, I bring some of that corporate background in, and talking with them, people have to understand that it's not love that makes the world go around. Unfortunately, it
it's
takes some money and some reality.
it's
So
profit margin.
yeah, so it's a little it gets a little dicey when you tiptoe back and forth between both worlds.
So, what I've experienced in my own, 32 years on this earth is not only living in the north and the south, going to school in rural areas and going to the school
Mm,
in more urban areas, but also being as like clean cut Boy Scout 4.0, I'm going to be a doctor guy, to like kind of doing psychedelics and like writing and Photoshop and now like doing a podcast. Like it's been the opposite of like the most safe route I could take.
sure.
Job security, Dr. Carrigan. That's about, it's cool, it's great, you're helping people, but it's also, man, it's safe. There's a big old trampoline right under you. You're not gonna fall. And then there's this, and it's like you're on a high wire above lava. Like, what are you're gonna try to make money on a, good luck? How are you gonna do it? I don't know. Good luck. I've
That
kind of
takes
seen
guts.
my own, excuse me.
That takes guts.
And but what I've seen is, so like you're living in both worlds. And as someone that like, even politically, like I've voted on, I've said this a million times on the podcast. I know people are rolling their eyes, but like I voted on both parties. 2008 I voted for Obama because I was 18 and wanted hope and change. 2012 I voted for Romney because I was like, fuck Obamacare. I want to be a doctor. I want to keep my money. 2016 I voted for Bernie because that was 2 years after my brother died, and I was like, suicide, and I was like, I think everyone probably needs mental health care. And in 2020 I voted for Trump because I was like, yeah, I don't really like the riots. I practice what I preach. I actually do change my opinions as I get older.
Yeah.
All of that, there's this sort of like meta wisdom you can garner from it, though. And it is trying to relay that message between both quote unquote groups, if you will. Like you said, you go back to the Gordon Gecko types, and you have to be like, it's not all hippies. Like there is some truth to like you got to preserve nature, like, and at the same time you got to go. You're swimming with brightly colored fish, and you got to be like, the world does run on like Excel spreadsheets. Like
Yeah. Uh-huh.
what I'm saying, what I'm trying to get to though, is in that moment of translation, which I'm often trying to do, even on this podcast, right? You and I are talking about, Fugitive in Paradise and diving, and then like I'll interview like a Delta Force guy about like the most brutal things in the world. There is that it's an odd thing to have to kind of bring pieces of, I want to say knowledge or wisdom because that sounds too snooty, some piece of fact between both perceptions of reality. And you're right, you can't go in with this no you're wrong, because people clam up at best
Yes.
and become violent at worst.
Mm-hmm.
But you almost develop like a sort of diplomacy of where like you have to be like, hey, I get it, those Wall Street guys are assholes, I'm on board with you. And that almost like it's almost like a Trojan horse. It sort of opens them up, and you're like, that being said, this entire diving thing we're doing, like this is a private corporation, this is an
Yeah.
LLC, this is a, I don't really know where I'm going with this, but do
Well,
you
no, but I understand your point because, and my strong suit has never been diplomacy. I was always kind of a black and white kind of person, like
that that's who I am till
this
I
is how
die.
it is.
That's who I am till I die.
And that cost me dearly in business. Looking back on it, I just told people what instead of telling them what they wanted to hear or sugarcoating it, I just told them the way it
Yeah.
was. And looking back on more than one occasion, I learned that kind of like cost me, some career points along the way.
Mhm.
So, um, it's a skill that you have to either. Some people can do it very easily, just part of the nature. Uh, I tend to be a little more, like I said, a little kind of black and white, and it's this way or that way. So, in order to make a point without pissing somebody off, or as you to your term, make them clam up because all of a sudden you come on too aggressively or too negatively, whatever. Um, it's taken a lot of work on my part to kind of back off that and kind of like convince them through other merits that maybe they should they need a different viewpoint. It's not easy to do,
No.
especially if you think you're right and
That,
they're wrong.
yeah.
Or
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
going
Yeah.
to
It's the most
it's
difficult thing in the
difficult, very
world.
difficult. And some people, like I said, take it naturally. I still have to work on it, and I learned that. And one day when I was in my old corporate life, my boss and I had to meet with some people who were we were developing this product called home banking at the time, brand new. Okay, and Chemical Bank was our client, and they were having a tough go of it, and they had some complaints, some justified, some not. Actually, most of them were not really justified, but my boss and I were going into this meeting. I was the junior guy. He was taking me along to this meeting, and I was ready. I was gearing up. I was, beginning to breathe heavy and getting myself ready for this, combative role with these other two executives from the other side, from Chemical. And um, we listened to them, and I'm going, and they're spouting off, and I'm sitting there, I'm squirming, getting hot under the collar. I'm saying, boy, once my boss gets going, because he was the lead guy, I couldn't take the lead in the conversation. I said, this is going to be fireworks,
Hmm.
unbelievable. And the first words out of his mouth to them, he goes, I couldn't agree more. I know exactly where you're coming from. And I was going, what are you doing? And I'm looking, and he goes, he said, yes, but one of them was a woman. Yes, Mary, I understand you. I got it. I hear you. I understand. And it disarmed them because they're waiting for the confrontation also.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we had three people, those two and myself, sitting there with our mouths open while my boss is going on, saying how much he agrees with them, how much he understands your viewpoint. And then he slowly slid in the butt.
Yeah.
However, and this is what, and before you know it, it was like hugging, everybody was hugging each other,
Yeah. Jubilee.
and
Yeah.
I was going, holy damn, what a
It's
technique
an
that is.
art. It is an art. You watch people
Watch
do
them.
it.
I learned more from that guy than I learned more from working for this fellow than I did in years of business school. I mean, not exactly, but for the
Yeah.
most part, in terms of how to get business done, I would have gone in there hard charging, we're right and stuff, and they would have thrown me out of my butt.
Yeah.
He got them to agree with us, turn around, and we're all buddies walking out of the meeting.
Oh yeah.
And I saw it time and time, and I began trying to do that sometimes. And to my amazement, I found out that really works.
It is when you see it, it really is like you're like, oh, it's winning isn't about going in with the most force and just like
Hmm.
brutal, like, just pure like concussive impact. Sometimes you see someone just like dance around it and you're like, oh dude, they are doing like a salsa dance and it's this art.
Hmm.
Excuse me. It's almost like fencing or something. You're like, oh, this isn't just tackling. This is this. They're weaving this thing. Yeah, and it often comes with complete disarmament. Or you'll
Yeah.
see. I've seen people this like I had a friend that used to do this online whenever there'd be a political argument. No matter what the other person said, he'd always just start with, "Yeah, you're probably right," and then
Hmm.
go, and you'd see the other person just completely open up,
Yeah.
and it was like, huh. And then like he didn't, and then not once you opened them up, you don't just then go all in. You make your point and also allow some concessions. Next thing you know, you have these two people maybe not agreeing 100%, but they're agreeing 50% when normally they would agree 0%. And
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
this insane dance.
Hmm. Yep.
So, so with that, and then what you've seen in it is so like the one thing you can learn from it is so how do I do this, right? And then there's like sort of like another level. I don't know if it's above that or adjacent to it, but then there's this sort of like meta theme of like, wait, why do I even need to convince other people?
Mm.
You start to realize you're like, everyone has their, with the exception of like psychopaths and pedophiles. Like, I mean, but seriously, with the exception of people that physically harm others
Yeah.
or get off on harming others, most people want the same thing, right? Shelter, decent paying job.
Hmm.
They want to be able to sleep well at night and they want a good place to raise their kids.
Yeah. They want to feel good. Yeah.
Yeah. And you want to enjoy the weekend. Like, so then there's this whole other thing. It's like, I don't even need to be like an olive branch between like the people diving in Consumel versus like the Wall Street bankers. You're almost just like they are their own people with their own wants and needs. I might as well just go join the dance.
Yeah. To your point about what do people want and stuff, they want to be happy, they want to feel good. And in another situation, I can tell you about working for another person. What I learned is that if you can make people feel good about themselves, you are golden.
Yeah.
Because another situation I had, again, I was working with a different person this time, a young lady, and she was the boss in this case, and we had to go into a meeting, and this guy was, the senior guy we had to deal with was really a total jerk. He was really, in all fairness, he just wasn't getting it, whatever. But I learned from again watching. I was ready to, here's the facts and figures. Here's I was going to lay out 105 reasons why the person was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Just right in black and white. This proves it, right? She would start off. I forget the guy's name. It doesn't matter. Phil, I got to tell you, what a brilliant idea that is. Now we just talked behind the scenes that this particular idea was totally
Just
insane.
retarded.
Okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
But Bill, what a marvelous idea. I can't believe how you were so insightful to do that and this and that. And before you know it, she has the guy eating out of her hand because she's making him feel good about himself.
Yeah.
You know, whereas I would have made the guy feel like a jerk because even though I had the black and white numbers to prove it,
Uh-huh.
okay, never would have gotten the point across. And we came out of the meeting, even though I kind of like, I let her do all the sugarcoating. I just was kind of like whatever. But we came out of the meeting with him thinking she's wonderful, and that guy Mila's an idiot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I said, no, and I said, okay, a lesson learned. If you can make people feel good about themselves, you are golden.
Yeah.
You can do no wrong.
Yeah.
And
And you're right.
doesn't mean you have to be a phony all the time, but it's a good technique to learn. I keep forgetting it half the time. I kind of drift back to my own, unless I'm very conscious that I have to do this.
Yeah.
I slip back to my old my
Well,
bad habit.
it also takes effort, and it has to be something you genuinely care about, because otherwise you're like some things like you just don't give a shit about. If somebody's favorite color is green and you like purple, how much energy are you really gonna put into? I don't give a
Yeah,
fuck. Purple's whatever. I don't even like those two colors, but I mean like whatever. You're just
yeah,
like yeah, go fuck yourself, whatever. Um, And then there are some things where it is like the black and white data where they're I've had on here Basil, I always forget his name, Basil Bass, former CIA paramilitary operator,
Okay.
hardcore motherfucker. And now he like privately funded just hunts pedophiles and rescues children. And he's like, there is no gray area. Like when a person buries a child in the woods after he
Right.
rapes them,
Yeah.
like he's like a psychopath. Someone that didn't know what they were doing was wrong. Someone who's
Mhm.
clinically insane. They wouldn't hide their actions. He was like, these people that operate in the shadows, they know what they're doing.
I know.
So from that sense, I'm like, that guy doesn't need negotiation skills. He just needs a well-oiled gun. And
Yes.
more power to you, Baz. But like
Mhm.
for other things, even when you have the data that says this guy is a dickhead, he is
Mhm.
incorrect. But if your end goal is to sort of build a bridge, you can't just go in there guns blazing. You have to do the whole olive branch thing. And what a great idea. On that sort of theme, from like what I've learned through this podcast, is there is sort of like a beautiful like lesson learned almost. It's like those like corny old sitcoms where it's like there's a lesson at the end of it and everyone's happy. But it really does feel like that because sometimes I'll go into something and I'll be like, I know factually like that. I like not an opinion, like 1 plus 1 is 2. I will go
Mhm.
into it and be like, and then I'll do the whole thing. I'll be like, but you kind of got to make them feel good about themselves. And then subtly, slyly, you insert the but. If you do that though, I have found sometimes they will insert something, and because they're doing it in a less hostile manner too, they will actually change my mind. I'll actually be like, oh wait, oh
Yeah.
maybe I'm wrong. And then there actually is, and I know it sounds like some cheesy Hallmark bullshit, but there actually is this moment where you're like, I learned something that I
Yes.
otherwise would have been way too defensive to learn.
Yes. That happens. That has happened.
Yeah. And you're like, oh fuck, I thought I was just being really smooth and I thought I was being nice. And then you're like, that asshole taught me something.
Yeah, there really is another side to the story.
Yeah. Yeah. But that then changes my whole perception of all of reality.
Yeah.
Is right? Is because it's almost like we're speaking two languages, like German and English. You got to have a good translator because
Mhm.
otherwise it will get lost in translation. But if you like translate enough things, ultimately you realize like unless your goal is to be a translator, you're like you don't need a like someone in English or someone in German or someone in Korean. They all know how to say like I'm thirsty, I would like some water, or like I
Mhm.
want to go to sleep, or I love my daughter. And then there's almost like a well, there's no need to teach them English because they know how to say it in German.
Mhm.
That's what I was trying to get at with like when you interview enough people from all walks of life, you almost start you're like, well, there's really no even need to show everyone that everyone has their own logic. It's just sort of this like you're watching like a Swiss watch and you're like, wait, it doesn't need me. You're like, this thing is just ticking on its own. You're almost like let it go on its own. And
Yeah.
there's some
Yeah.
weird Buddhist detachment when you get to that point. And I don't know what you do with that. I would imagine you'd stop doing a podcast and just go live in the woods and I don't know,
Commune
whatever.
with nature for the rest of your life.
Yeah, meditate or something. I'm clearly not there yet because I'm still
No.
screaming in front of a camera. But
Yeah.
like,
No.
um, I guess that is kind of full circle though, because you and I have talked about this before, right? Well, it was you, correct? That you were, it was like the day of or the day after 9/11, and you were
Yes.
like, what proof do I have that that wasn't going to be me? Like those people didn't know that this morning.
Yep. The that came back to me when they had some anniversary shows this year and stuff like
Hmm.
that, and on 60 Minutes and things like that. And some of them focused. I think I might have talked about this. One of the things that really drove it home was the picture of what what's become now as a falling
The
man,
Falling Man, yeah.
and looking at that guy, knowing that 2.5 hours earlier he was having breakfast with his family, saying, "I'll
Eating
see you tonight
cereal.
for dinner."
Yeah.
What could be further from his mind than that happening? You
Yeah.
know,
What
I
was he
mean,
thinking in the shower that morning? Like
you can almost accept, okay, you go out of your door one day, you might be in a random car crash and get killed. That's almost like makes sense.
you almost your brain almost allows that a little more.
But to say, you're going to jump out of the World Trade Center in 3 hours to your death is like, I don't think so. But it happened to this guy, and it could happen to anybody.
That
You know?
yeah, even just that sentence, like, you finish shaving in the shower. By the way, before lunch, you're gonna jump from the windows on the world to your death.
Yeah. It's
Did I
like,
become
well,
suicidal? No, it's actually the lesser of the painful options.
yeah.
What? Like there, and I like, what was that guy think? What was Falling Man thinking? And was he, man, when I'm finished with this job, I'm gonna fucking retire. I've always wanted to go scuba diving, or I've always wanted to
Mhm.
start a podcast. And you and I have talked about that, how you have to come to peace with like that is, I mean, in terms of like, because once you get to a point of probability, it's all equal. Like, what are the chances I'm going to get in a car crash versus jump out of a building? It's probably more likely the car crash.
Yeah,
But once you get into the whole 1 in a million thing, you're like, it's probably just as likely I'm going to jump out of a building. You have to sort to incorporate that into your life of like, it probably won't be you, but if,
but if.
and you and I have talked about that, so
Mhm.
I won't further flesh that out because we've talked about and how that's led to you doing scuba and me doing a podcast. Is that
Mhm.
for me it was losing a brother, and I was like, that could have been me, and that might. What if it wasn't suicide? What if it was a car crash? Blah blah blah. And
Sure.
again, you and I did a whole episode on this, but with that, I would almost say that the whole like dance between the two worlds of white collar, Jordan Belfort, Gordon Gecko. Not saying that you were working with demons. I just,
Yeah, I know, yeah,
yeah, like my dad was white collar, so I don't know why I'm using these terrible examples. Someone like my dad, white collar
yeah.
business, and again, more so like the beautiful tan swimming with with nurse sharks. Does that aid in the sort of move to that world and not even really giving a shit about confronting them? I would imagine part of it would be like we talked about, hey guys, like they're not all demons on Wall Street. But then there's also this other point that's just like, I don't even care. Like I'm not jumping out of the World Trade Center day. I'm just gonna snorkel. And if they're talking about how bad like the white man is, you're like, whatever. I don't care. The water's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, part of that kind of comes from, or came from me from total surprise. Like once I tried that kind of a life, in bits and pieces, because I was still pretty much, firmly planted in the corporate life before I, slid over to this other side of my, my being, whatever. Um, I found that just the experience itself of scuba diving, for example, it's so different from what we experience every day of your life.
Oh yeah,
It
everything
was
about it.
in terms of like sensory. I won't say sensory deprivation, but this your senses. You go through your day not being weightless. Underwater, you are weightless. We
Uh-huh.
don't go through our day being deprived of sound.
Sound.
Underwater, it's a totally silent world except the sound of your bubbles. This kind of like weightless, silent world. All of a sudden, it just opens up other things that your mind begins to like work in ways it never did before because now it's
Ah,
adapting to different sensory perceptions that it never had before. Even though I might have read
ah.
about it, but until you do it, you really it's something else. But now you're in a whole nother um, physical universe, if you
It's a
will.
different
In fact,
reality.
one of my friends who led me on some of my adventures, this young lady, oh, she's my age, no, we're not young anymore. I met her by accident, but total serendipitous. My first book, Dangerous Waters, she happened to get a copy. I forget how she even got it. Emails me one day, and that began a friendship. Oh, she lives in California. I'm on the East Coast, and she's gotten me on some of my crazier expeditions to go swim with humpback whales and
Is she
visit the
the
gray whales and
is she
stuff
the
like that.
dolphin? Is she the dolphin lady?
No, she's not the dolphin lady. That's somebody else.
Okay.
That's somebody else.
All right.
Just Judy Hemingway. But to my
Yeah.
point, as we're talking about this, she wrote a book. Her first book was called The Universe Next Door, which
Ah,
for her was the underwater or underwater world, the universe next door. Okay?
yeah.
So that's where I was going in that thought that I didn't really plan on. To me, it was initially something exciting to do. Something, yeah, let's try. This is pretty gung ho stuff. Wow, I saw this when I was growing up watching Mike Nelson Sea Hunt, that kind of stuff. I'm going to try this now. I had no idea or could have predicted how I was going to feel once I experienced it. But once you've experienced this, it's I can't think of the word now, but this
Alien.
kind of, yeah, this all of a sudden this weightless, for the most part silent world, you just feel like you're just floating in space. I know they have some therapy where you have these floating tanks where you can
Mm-hmm.
stuff in dark. Well, you're not in darkness, you're seeing things around you, but it's that same kind of like totally weightless, uh free spirit kind of thing that it's almost transformative to how you
Yeah.
begin perceiving your world and people around you. And it was like wow, I didn't expect to feel that way after I did. I expected to, try something different, exciting. That was pretty cool. Let's go back to work.
Yeah, yeah.
It began to open up other ways that I wanted to feel like that more often.
Yeah. So it's not like taking a day off of work and like switching it up and you go, I don't know, go get shit faced and play like putt putt. Like that
Yeah.
is different, but it's not. And then if you're not scuba, because I've never done that, you're only ever going under for a little bit at a time, and then you're what,
Right.
10 seconds later, and so you're coming back into this world.
Right.
But that's a good point. Like you're completely changing your reality.
Yeah.
You're stepping in. I mean, it's like, I guess the closest thing would be like the guys I've had on here that are in like Delta Force. They're like, it's a real head fuck going like from like special operations back to, and not because of like PTSD, because they all say like they don't have PTSD because they're the hunters. They're like, they feel bad for like soldiers who have to go occupy an area. That's where you get PTSD, is you're
Mhm.
waiting for an attack versus when you are the predator. They say it's, but regardless,
Mhm.
like when you're overseas and like you are like, you don't even fart without thinking which way the wind is going because you
Mhm.
actually don't want them to detect you at all. Everything you're thinking about is shadows and light angles and don't be on
Right.
the ridge and cover up your footprints and what a thermal. We don't know. We always have to assume that there's a satellite overhead. And then you come back here and it's just like, yeah, you can just go to Walmart. You don't have to make sure that someone's not tailing you. You can
Mhm.
just you don't have to go in and steal anything and slit anybody's throat. You can actually just go get some frozen chicken and insert a debit card into a machine. You're good. You don't need to shoot anybody. And they're like, it is an odd, there's a little sort of like, it changes how you think because you stop thinking in terms, when you're overseas doing these things, you stop thinking about like what's trending politically, how's the market moving. They're like, you are solely, they say it's actually kind of like soothing because you are immersed in truth. You are
Mhm.
worried about, are my guys alive? Are we moving forward? Are we being detected? Are the silencers on? Are we, are we skewing our footsteps? Or do we have water? Do we have food? Are our radios working? It's pure truth. You don't give a shit about who's in the Super Bowl. You
Mhm.
don't give a shit about an Amazon charge. It's just, I'm going to kill them before they kill me. And it is an immersion of total, everything you do has purpose. In that same sense, not saying that that's what scuba is, but in terms of being a totally different world,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, you got, how would that affect you? Like they say, if you're right, if you're blind, like different parts of your brain grow, or if you're stuck
Right.
in
If
a
you if you if you
wheelchair,
lose, if you lose one of your senses, the other senses kind of
yeah,
take
and then
over.
you
They pick
imagine,
up.
someone like Stephen Hawking, where it's like, what if you can't even like move your body? Does your entire
Right.
brain grow? And I would argue that it probably does,
Yeah.
based on him.
Yeah.
What happens when you go into a weightless world
Uh-huh.
where, now, granted, we're at the bottom of a 75-mile gaseous ocean called the atmosphere, but you don't notice it because you're just been in it forever.
Right.
But you go to weightlessness where you do feel it on every square inch of, you are hyper aware of your atmosphere, which is
Mhm.
now the ocean. It's silent aside from your own breathing.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then you are not, you're on land. You are the apex predator. Sure, there are lions
Mhm.
and shit, but we have them behind cages. You go in there and it's like, you do have to be looking at shadows.
You have to be aware of what's around you, under you, over you, behind you, in front of
That,
you.
well, that probably completely does change your brain.
Yeah.
I would imagine that changes things that aren't even related to it. Just your thought process, maybe like the structure of sentences in your brain. Like I wonder how it actually, do your thoughts become, not to go all hippy dippy, but I mean, I wonder if your thoughts almost become more like free floating and fluid,
Yeah,
or zen.
it could well be. In fact, and I haven't read this yet because it just came across the wire yesterday. But there's a newsletter called Dive Newswire. This guy Scott Jones puts it out, and I didn't get a chance to go through it this year. I kind of clicked on some of the stories, and one of them was that some scientific studies showed that scuba diving actually affects your mental health or improves your mental health.
Sure.
Now, I didn't read about it. I didn't get all the details. I haven't read. I'm going to go back after we talk and go back. And I'm going to make sure I read it as I talk about it. But it does have an effect on you because you feel, like I said, totally different than the way you do every day on land. Like
Yeah.
you're all of a sudden you're in a whole different world, different universe, and it's almost like it becomes addictive, but not in a bad way. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
any addiction can become bad depending on your personality. Uh, but it was almost like I got to do this again. I want to do this more often. I want to experience this more. And the more you do it, the more you kind of say, "Wow, this is Not that you want to live underwater for the rest of your life, but it does affect your way of looking at things.
It's almost like, have you ever gone on like prolonged, I know I have a couple times in my life, like prolonged period of smoking pot. Like
Mm,
now, I don't know, at 32, I'll maybe smoke like once or twice a year and it's fun and it's novel. But I've just found after enough times over the past 15 years, I've just found it's really not for me.
mhm.
It's just not doesn't I'm a very hyperactive OCD. I love to work, I love to build. But I have gone on periods in life for sometimes a month or two, sometimes a year, where it be kind of I incorporated that more and more. Less coffee, and it's bad. I gained a lot of weight, but like less coffee, less working out, and more kind of easing into the day, smoking, meditating. And it is interesting to see how the change doesn't happen immediately. It's after a month, after
Mm,
2 months, you start to realize like more of your I remember like more of your apartment, you're now looking for places to sit. And so you had like things you would never pick up on before. If you walked into another friend's apartment, you could actually tell like, oh, this person also smokes because you maybe note an extra bean bag or something
mm,
versus more of like a clean cut, this is a type A, this is a pre-law student or something. And it was interesting to see just little things, how your day would change, how you were less OCD about closing the blind. Maybe one of the blinds was open, maybe one was closed. It was very, I wouldn't say it was good or bad. It was just different.
just
For
different.
me,
Yeah.
I like, I like to wake up at the same time. I love coffee and I love working. And that's just kind of, I found that that's where I belong. But
Right.
I would imagine that as you sort of slowly introduce those things, and again, it's not enough that you do it once. It's when you do it repeatedly, it starts to become this sort of like almost like a chant where
Hmm.
it starts to make its own like footprint
It
in
becomes part of
reality.
your life.
Yeah. Then you see it start to manifest in other ways to how you respond to texts,
Hmm.
to I found one thing I was when I was smoking a lot of pot, I found I was always like super perceptive. So instead of being just responding to a text like, yeah, cool, what's up? You'd really look at it and you'd be like, yeah, man, hey, by the way, I hope everything's going all right. Just little tokens of just empathy that you
Mm.
maybe wouldn't have, right? Versus if you're drinking a lot, it's more of like, fuck off, right? Just kind of an asshole. But that has to be one of the things then, right? In how if you're swimming every day in a silent environment where you're weightless and you can feel the atmosphere on every inch of your body, I wonder what ways, and again, not good or bad, but I wonder what ways that changes how you talk or how you arrange the furniture in your room. I wonder if there's something
It,
like
it could have it could have effects because our bodies are, what do they say, like 60% water or whatever, 50%
70.
water,
Yeah.
some high degree of percent of water,
It's 70. Yeah.
and you're in a water environment, right?
Yeah.
Um, so and you're under this pressure, even though you don't feel the pressure. Like I don't feel like as you go down, you're every 33 feet, the pressure doubles, okay, or increases by, I forget the formula. At 33 feet, it's double. At 66 feet, it's 1.5 times, whatever it is. So it doesn't actually double. It increases by a decreasing percent, but it's adding up.
Hmm.
So if you're 100 feet down, you're under like 4 or 5 times the pressure that we are at the surface.
Mm.
Yet you don't feel like anybody squeezing your head or something, like you just don't feel it because your body somehow adjusts to that.
Hmm.
But to your point, I think you don't know what physiology is changing or reacting to it. Your body might be compensating in ways you don't know,
Yeah.
because now because everything is pressing, your lungs become like one half their normal size. Now I
Yeah.
don't feel them being squashed, but evidently they are. Everything is it puts a big strain on your cardiovascular system. Although I don't feel it. I guess if I was in a good shape, I might feel it. But for the most part, you don't feel that your cardiovascular system is pumping differently, but it really is.
Yeah.
And all your organs are getting compressed and things like that. But you don't feel it. You don't feel like somebody has you in a vice. It's just the way, for some reason, I don't know if it's compensating pressure, whatever the hell it is, but you just don't feel that. But those changes are going on. So who's to say, it's
What's
not
happening to your brain?
putting pressure on your brain, which is making some neurons fire differently and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. And then that coupled with and now you're not hearing, So it's like, is more blood flowing to the area that is compensating for like lag for your like your visual acuity because
Mm-hmm.
kind of the whole, so it's like simulating being deaf, and then what effect does that have when you're also 100 feet underwater, and then then there's always things we never expect, like the gut brain axis, where over the past 10 years there's like a new field of study where first it was like a hypothesis, and then it was like, oh, maybe there's connection. Now they're like, there's actually an overwhelming connection between your gut health
Mm-hmm.
and like your neurotransmitters, meaning it directly affects your mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so like what other things are happening when you're underwater in some weightless environment? I mean, how are things getting jostled around? I mean, maybe it's incredible for you.
Yeah, and part of it probably is subconscious to it, or you push things to your subconscious because one of the biggest problems divers can face, or one of the biggest dangers, is a panic attack, which
Sure.
can happen to even the most very experienced diver. As long as things are going okay, fine. But if something happens where you feel you must get to the surface because either you can't breathe or there's something, some problem you're having, and so for some people it could be nothing more than claustrophobia, but for them
Yeah.
it's a very real sense. Obviously, you get some people experience that. Um, if there's some problem where all of a sudden you're not getting enough air, I gotta get to the surface, but you can't get to the surface because the surface is way up there. You just can't shoot up, otherwise
Yeah. You get the bends.
so other issues come up. So all of a sudden your body is undergoing a panic attack in such a way that it almost outweighs your rational way to say, I
Mm-hmm.
must calm down. Now if you're very, very experienced, you can kind of suppress that, but panic attacks can happen to even the most experienced diver,
Yeah.
depending on what the issue is.
Yeah.
So the fact that your body now all of a sudden must revert to its fight or flight instinct kind of thing to survive, which overpowers your rational thought. Okay, that's one of the things that is very different about being down there. Even though you don't feel it from a moment to moment, but once something does go wrong that triggers that flight or fight, panic attack kind of thing, well, it could be a very bad day.
Yeah.
And it must be, and it's got to be something to do that your subconscious is suddenly, you have your primal brain way, you have your
Your
it's
reptilian,
overpowering
yeah.
your human,
Neocortex.
yeah, it's one part is overpowering the other one. The rational part saying stay calm, the reptilian brain
Oh
saying I have to
yeah.
survive, get me the hell out of here. And you have that conflict going on.
And that is true. Yeah, it's like, yeah, well, I'm no stranger to anxiety, but like, yeah, my rational brain will always be like, relax, you're fine, you're in your apartment, like you're okay. And then you have that, yeah, the beast part of you. That's like the thing that has made it so that, our species has survived over millions of years, because it's like food, water, fucking breathing. Like it doesn't have time for
That's the
bullshit.
order. I don't know. We put one above, put food to the end. I don't know.
Yeah, whatever. But it
I
is the
got
white
you.
collar brain. It is like survival, profit, right? It is.
Yeah.
And then like, but that's a point where it's like, no, so if that part of my brain takes over when I'm having a panic attack, it's fine, because it might say you need to lay down. I probably don't need to lay down, but there's also no consequence if I do lay down.
Hmm.
Versus if you're 100 feet underwater, yeah, that is a special kind of dance. But man, you almost wonder then, if you took someone who dove every day and who lived this life and then maybe inserted them into Midtown Manhattan for 12 hours a day for 10 years, do they, over time, do they start wearing cufflinks?
Yeah.
Do they
Yeah.
start, does their Adam's apple get bigger? Do they start
Does it
turning
feel
into
like
more
does it feel
alpha?
like a
And
fish out of water or what?
yeah, do they start going like, do they start looking at protesters and they're like fucking hippies?
Yeah.
Like, I bet they
Yeah.
do. And when you look at it from that way, it's like, so there is no objective reality then. It's just where you exist. The Wall Street guy thrives in Midtown Manhattan.
Right.
Not only would he not thrive diving, he would actually slowly become the diver. And if you
Hmm.
took the diver, the long hair, just the perfect, like you have the perfect tan, you threw him into Midtown Manhattan, give him some time. He'll
It
become
might
he'll
take a
become a
while. I got a funny feeling. A couple of weeks ago, this sucks to be back on the water.
no, no,
You're
but
right.
you'd have to force him there. You'd have to
Yes,
force him
you
to
have
stay
to.
there.
Yeah.
Give it 10 years, I bet they're
We
a
do, we
corporate
do, we
raider.
do adapt. We do adapt, I guess. It's
Yeah.
adapt us or go extinct.
Yeah. Give them 10 years, they'll be a corporate raider. Give them 20 years and they'll be in front of a Senate hearing. Why did you
You
do
know?
this? You're like, I didn't know. They'll be
Yeah,
right there. They'll have the gold pin. They'll have the fucking lawyers right there.
yeah.
They'll have their Yale team.
We'll
Oh yeah.
discover not all the sharks are in the ocean. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, big, yeah, there are demons down there. You'd be like, fucking come up here. You want the real natural selection. It's Wall Street. But like, which then it's almost weird then, because that then starts to beg the question, like, are we are we doing anything, or it's like, who is it? Like, was it Bruce Lee? Does he have the quote like, water can flow or it can crash, it can spill or it can fill up a
Hmm.
cup. It's like water just takes the form of what's around it. You then have to wonder, like, did we create like lower Manhattan and finance, or is that just like a universal thing that we started to inhabit? And then like, water doesn't exist in like a vapor, but if it goes through a sprinkler, it becomes
Hmm.
vapor. And water
Right.
doesn't necessarily want to be a compressed ocean unless you put it all in one spot. It becomes, so it's almost like, were the Mongols really the Mongols, or was Nazi Germany really Nazi Germany, or was that just like a frequency and a vibe that whoever was going to be there, it just so happened to be a bunch of guys that look like me,
They
white
tapped
skin and
into
blue
them.
eyes, but like, it could have been anything. And
Hmm.
someone's going to take that out of context. Maybe I shouldn't have used Nazi Germany. It could have been any of us. That was a bad example. Fuck off. But like, whatever. Maybe it's
Yeah.
Midtown Manhattan. Maybe it's diving off the coast of Mexico. You almost have to start wondering then, like, are we really anything but are we just the are we just the fluid filling the vessel? And then, there's a new thing coming. We call it whatever, the newest generation, Gen Z. They're TikToking and they're all transgender and have blue hair. We would probably be them if we were born in 2011.
If you were born, yes, it depends on your frame of reference, I guess.
Yeah,
I'll tell you a funny story.
sure.
A few years ago, they brought up the parts of the Titanic, artifacts from the Titanic, and they had them
Yeah.
in Manhattan at an exhibit, and they tried to personalize it by if they found a notebook with somebody's name on it, it would be there, and they would put that person's personal effects near it, so you could see what this
Okay.
person happened to have with them on that trip. Okay, so in one, they had this glass case, a large glass case, and inside it were little artifacts of a person's personal hygiene things. There was a comb, there was this, there was that, and there was a clamshell type case, a spring case, that
Hmm.
must have had glasses in it at one time, whatever, but it was closed. So I was following a bunch of kids around at this exhibit. There was some class trips were there that same day. So I was following these kids who were like maybe middle school age kids, and whatever, or grammar school, maybe eighth graders or something like that. And they came to, so I was kind of just following them around, just watching how they were perceiving all this stuff. And one of them came to the glass case with this object, was this clamshell case. It was when I say clamshell, it wasn't a clam shell. This is a
Yeah,
real.
no, I know. Yeah.
Um, and he's looking at it, and he's looking at it, and he's looking at it. He goes to his friend, "Is that a cell phone?"
Huh.
So I realized these kids, at the first glance, what a stupid comment, but then you realize, wait a minute, these kids have never not known cell phones.
Yeah.
They didn't realize that in the Titanic, they
There
didn't
was
have cell
no.
phones. It
Yeah.
was part of his reality.
It's
So,
kind of funny. It's
you know,
like, is you're probably, I would imagine you, and I think I would, and most people would, you're probably looking at those things like very almost reverently. It's this
yeah,
person died in a terrible thing. The reality is like, let's say whoever had that case was like a kid. That kid was probably a little douchebag. That other people in the Titanic were like, "Fuck this kid. He's
yeah,
running around. He thinks everything is a Model T because he never knew a life without cars."
yeah.
And we kind of look at it like so reverently, but at the time, if there was some bratty 10-year-olds on the
Yeah,
Titanic, probably there's probably some Gen Z assholes on the. They're like, these fucking kids don't respect any. They don't know anything about anything, right?
yeah.
You probably had that, and it's just because so like in 100 years they're going to be like, this was the cell phone that this TikToker used, and he was killed in a car crash, and they're all going to be reverent. Come back to us, and we're like, no, fuck that kid, who's annoying. Like, yeah, that is weird. Which then
But
makes you think, what?
I was just gonna say, so basically our reality is, whatever we experience.
Yeah,
And this kid had no, he could not relate to a different reality because this is all he knew.
Yeah, and it is a slippery slope then because
Mhm.
you like it forces you to start humanizing other aspects of other eras of humanity that
Mhm.
maybe you're indifferent to. You're like, yeah, you're like, maybe I would have been part of Napoleon's army, but it also brings up very evil things. You're like, maybe
Mhm.
I would have been a raping and pillaging Viking.
Well, that comes into the thing about how do you judge people over time. And I think you have to judge people according to the times in which they lived.
Yeah, not everyone was a raping pillaging. There's probably people alive at the time that were like, these Vikings are assholes.
Yeah.
So that too, maybe in 1,000 years they'll be like, if you were alive in 2022, you might have been part of ISIS. No, anybody watching this in 1,000 years, like, no, we all hate ISIS. They are assholes. Like, so that's also something. I don't know. Then you have to start looking at in terms of like just diving in the ocean, like how does I wonder what the first and then second and then 10th generation of Mars inhabitants will be like? How will they
Mhm.
start to deviate? What is it like when the night sky is different and you don't grow up with the same whatever constellations or the
Mhm.
same number of hours in a day or the same temperature or you grow up you and I it's just inherently known, right? That like think of every movie like made. It doesn't matter if it's about wizards or magical kingdoms or if it's a thriller or if it's about the CIA. There are some like there are some basic things. The sky
Mhm.
is always blue. There are always clouds, and somewhere you have a hill with grass on it. Doesn't matter what the movie is, Harry Potter or Saving Private Ryan. Those are some like background things that we've just accepted as truth.
Right.
What happens when you, your parents, and your grandparents all grew up on Mars? And that's an example. That's obviously a geographic example of okay,
Mhm.
so movies would be red, but what does that then do to the mind? Like what other truths are there that maybe we don't notice? It's what's his who is that poet? Uh uh David Foster Wallace, David Wallace Foster Wallace.
Um,
He committed suicide. He was David, I think it's David Foster Wallace. He had a great thing though.
okay.
And I guess we'll kind of wrap it up with this is he had this quote where he goes, there are two fish and they just graduated fish college and they both have their whatever their cap and gown and their diplomas and the whole world's in front of them. They've got it's the beginning of the rest of their life and they're swimming down the sidewalk, going through whatever town in middle America. And I don't know about this and I don't know about that and what are you going to do and I don't know what I want to do. And an older fish swims by and he smiles at him and he goes, congratulations boys, and they say thank you, and he goes, how's the water? And they both smile and they keep going. And they're quiet for a minute and they stop talking about chicks and who they want to sleep with. And they go, one of the fish looks at the other and goes, the hell is water? And I always think about that. Like, what thing is there? So like, we just identified the grass, the blue sky, and the whatever as like, oh, that's something we don't think about. But I just brought it up, so now we're thinking about it. What's the other? There's something else that like we haven't broached yet. Like, what is that, and how is that shaping our lives? What the hell is water?
Yeah, well, our senses basically give us our perception of reality. So depending on what our senses are telling us, our reality is going to seem very different.
Like what is so we're talking about right as you're 100 feet underwater and it's compressing your brain and doing different things you're also getting less light, it's silent. I mean,
Mhm.
but then there's also things that we're maybe not really thinking about of just like the gravitational constant of the earth. We're not There's a gravitational constant and then you equate into it the diameter of the planet you're on with its mass.
Right.
So that quote unquote gravity will be different on Mars. But then what about like magnetic poles? What about like the Van Allen radiation belt? Like, what about having a moon? All these little things.
Speaking of what you just raised is that every I don't know what the frequency is. I don't know if it's every billion years or 100, whatever it is, but the magnetic poles shift. They they
Yeah.
they flip.
Uh-huh.
What happens when
What
that
happens
happens?
then? Yeah.
You know,
Is there a weird growing pains period?
besides the fact your compass is going to do start doing
Yeah,
pinwheel
that's
itself.
probably the least of your problems. But like, yeah, what is life on Mars hold? Like, how does that actually change us? But then even that is a planet around a star. There could be some more just absurd versions of reality. Like, what about if we made an artificial planet or an artificial starship,
Mm,
and then you're just thrown out into the middle of a galaxy, and you're never really. I mean, they're all stars. The sun is just another star, but because we're so close to it, we don't really classify it as it's the bright hot thing, and then at the nighttime we have a bunch of little stars.
There's a funny thing about talking about perceptions of reality and how it affects us. But the author, I remember Arthur Clarke, famous
Arthur Clark,
author,
Arthur C. Clarke, yeah.
Arthur C. Clarke, and he wrote a book. One of his books was called Childhood's End,
Okay.
and it was basically we're visited finally. Another species comes to Earth. That's the end of our childhood. They're going to now transform us, teach us whatever. But where I'm going on this is that is one of their experiences on Earth. Now these people are used to traveling the universe at the speeds of light. That's that's their thing that he's writing about. Yet when an Earthling is giving somebody on one of the visitors a ride in an open convertible, the guy's freaking out because the sensation of speed in an open convertible is more than he's ever experienced.
Yeah.
And even though he's going 50 miles an hour, he's having a panic attack because there's an open convertible and the wind is blowing and
Yeah.
his hair is made of or something like this. So he's this alien getting freaked out by
Just
going 50
losing his
miles an
head.
hour in an open convertible where he's been used to traveling at the
Light speed.
speed of
Yeah.
light all
Yeah.
through the universe.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's another kind of not related to anything we're talking about, but I think it's Isaac Asimov, and he wrote this script, and I don't know it well enough to quote it well, so I'll spoiler alert. But basically, like they go and discover like the star that was like this whatever the star of Bethlehem, whatever
Oh,
to mark a child was born, and like they go and discover it, and it was like a supernova, and they find all these planets around it of people who like they had been detecting that it was about to go supernova, and it was like a sad end of the world, and you have all these people like clinging together inside of bunkers and stuff
mhm.
before they were cooked to death. And it's like in our world this was like the most glorious. It's a child is born in
Yeah,
Bethlehem. It's it's Christmas, and it's like the most wonderful time of the, and to them it was apocalypse.
exactly.
That
One person's apocalypse is another person's savior.
Yeah, that'd be like if somehow like the if 9/11 was somehow like as bright as a star in some distant galaxy, they might be like a that might go down in mythology of like a child is born, and us it's like no, it's people jumping out of a build.
Yeah.
That doesn't really have anything with what we were talking about, but like that just popped into my head. It's fucking nuts. Um Paul, we've been going for a little for an hour, so let's wrap this one up. I'll put the book in the
Okay.
description, and as always, man, I love shooting the shit with you. I love I think you and I open each other's minds and go down. I forgot we were even talking about your book. We ended up on 9/11 and
Oh
I
yeah,
get it.
we always do that. One interesting backstory to the book.
Sure.
I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but where I have people's, I asked anybody who was in the book, shoot me your photograph so people can put a face to the name and stuff like this. So Ed McDonald, who I have playing um, witness protection guy, the
Mhm.
person who runs gets the mob guys into witness protection program. If you notice, his picture looks kind of young, but he's really my age because I went to school with him back in the day. But the caption is courtesy of Warner Brothers because that photo is actually a picture of him in the movie Goodfellas playing the part he's playing in my book as a witness protection lawyer, getting the guys in the witness protection. And as it turns out, just to take it one step further, he was supposed to be a technical consultant on that movie for the guy who was going to play his part. Okay, of interviewing Henry and Hill and his wife
Yeah,
at the end of the
yeah.
movie. So Eddie shows up to the for the on the set, ready to be a consultant, and they look at him, and here's this good-looking guy, presents himself well, talks well, has a personality, and they go, "Why don't you read for the part?" He
Yeah,
goes,
well,
like, "He read for the part and got the job." He actually in the movie, if you ever watch Goodfellas again, he's actually, and he did get Henry Hill into the production program, whatever. So he's actually playing himself.
he's
He's in the movie playing himself in that real role.
oh
To a couple, even though he's
whoa.
still a practicing attorney, he did have a couple other parts in some of the movies. I don't know what they were, but it was kind of like an interesting side venture to his real
That
pursuit.
is cool. And you incorporate, yeah, okay. No, because I do remember the witness.
Yeah.
My well, that given I guess he's passed away. My uncle was in the DEA and he was in the witness
Oh,
protection program. I was gonna say, like, I wonder if I should say it, but he passed away 10, 12 years ago. But yeah, he was in the witness. Maybe I shouldn't say that. No, I think I'm probably
well,
fine.
that's all right. But I had just to wrap it up though. One of the things that helps to be, if you're an author is you come across interesting people. Be careful. You might wind up in a future book. You never know.
I'll be in one of your books.
But
I'll be the unhinged
I've been
podcaster.
lucky in my life to meet some very interesting people with very colorful backgrounds who made it into my books because of the fact they were interesting and had colorful backgrounds.
Absolutely.
So it kind of helps to spice up the books and the stories, I think, and it makes it more fun to write.
Well, that's how you make it on this podcast.
Okay,
I don't. I try not to talk to boring people. That's it is kind
appreciate
of
it.
it is kind of has it kind of has skewed my perception of reality because I get to talk to interesting people all the time.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Like, well, even you, like you don't have like a normal history. Like what you've done is not normal, and it's I do sometimes have to like ground myself and realize like the sampling of people I interview is are like not indicative of like the population. I don't know if that's good or bad,
I think
but
I think that's good for the rest because the rest of the population doesn't want to read about themselves
very true.
or
Very true.
listen to people about themselves. They want to hear about people doing extraordinary things.
That's a good point.
You can have ordinary people doing extraordinary things or vice versa, whatever, but it
Yeah,
makes life more interesting, I think, to
that's a very
document
good.
life
That's a good
these
point,
different
actually.
people.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. Well, as always, Paul, we've
Well,
gone down the rabbit hole and then some. And
yeah, so I could have a role in the next book for somebody who's doing a podcast and
do
something
it. Do
goes wrong and he's running for his life. I don't know.
well. I don't kill me. Don't kill. Maybe kill me off.
Oh,
That
no,
seems
no.
to always help people with
Well,
their
we'll see.
careers.
Okay.
Well, if I am in, have me killed off because that always helps people with
I'll
careers.
run it by you first, but if you do get killed off, it'll be very interesting. I promise.
Make it a fascinating death. Make
I
my jaw
will.
turn up on a playground or
Yeah,
something and scar some
yeah,
kid.
exactly. You want this, get run over by a bus. I guarantee
Yeah.
it will be something like that.
I want to traumatize some preschoolers. Have me get hit by a garbage truck in front of the school.
There you go.
Just a red streak for 100 yards. That's how
Splendid.
yeah. And I create the next generation of psychopaths because they witnessed a death during
There you
preschool.
go.
There are my true colors.
Okay,
Mr. Paul Mila, I'll text you this when it's up.
great.
Schedule the next one. If I don't schedule the next one with you, as I tell everyone, please reach out to me because it just means I've forgotten. And
Definitely, I can relate to that. Yeah.
yeah, I know I do it all the time. In my own defense, 957 episodes.
Wow.
I juggle so many guests before. I always have a feeling, and it's always there. I'm always like, I'm forgetting someone. I know I'm
Well,
forgetting.
1,000 should be a big milestone. You should do something special for that.
I already got it scheduled. I already got it
Cool.
scheduled. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Um, yeah, I feel like Home Alone though when they like get to the airport and they're on the plane and they realize they left the kid. That happens to me at this podcast. I'll be sitting there meditating and I'll be like, there's someone who like I know I haven't responded to an email. I go through my emails every day, but I'm always like, I know there's someone. So for any other guests listening, if you ever get a random email or a text from me like, "Hey dude, how you doing?" It's because like Home Alone, I'm like, "Fuck, it's Paul," and it's or whatever it is. So yeah. But
Okay. I promise you'll hear from me at some point.
all right, good. Please do. Trust me, I wouldn't keep having you on if I didn't like you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been
I
a lot of
like
fun. A lot of things
I
going.
like picking your brain, man. You're an interesting guy. You're a fascinating guy. I'll put the link to your book in the description.
Thank
Get
you.
it. It's a fantastic read. It's a short read. It's really you can burn right through it.
As I say, I write easy beach reads, not brain benders.
It is. No, it is. And that's someone that's always pushing like Cold War histories. This was a nice change in flavor. It was a nice change in mindset, much like diving. But
Very cool.
Paul, my brother, thank you so much,
Okay.
man. I'll text you this episode when it's up.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, everybody. God bless.